Chris Sale delivers once again for the Atlanta Braves on Tuesday night in a much-needed 3-0 win over the Colorado Rockies. He eclipses 200 strikeouts on the season in the process. And we're going to take a look at the wild card spots and the matchups for the Atlanta Braves. What is the ideal wild card spot? What is the ideal matchup for the Braves if they're to get into the postseason? We'll also discuss some injury updates on Ozzie Albies and Whit Merrifield. All that on today's episode of Locked On Braves. So let's get into it.
You are Locked On Braves, your daily Atlanta Braves podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, and welcome back to Locked On Braves, part of Locked On Sports Atlanta, where we cover your favorite Atlanta sports teams each and every day. I'm your host, Jake Mastriani. You can follow me on social media at shortstopball, at LockedOn_Braves. Subscribe to us on YouTube. If you're new, hit that thumbs up button so others can find us and leave me a comment down below, especially if you're an everydayer. Had several people let me know on the last podcast that they are an everydayer. I really appreciate you letting me know that, especially if you make Locked On Braves your first listen of each and every day. Thank you so much for all your support here at Locked On Braves. On today's podcast, we're going to take a look back at Tuesday's win over the Colorado Rockies, Chris Sale's performance as he improves his Cy Young resume. We'll also take a look at the wild card scenarios for the Atlanta Braves. What is the ideal wild card spot for them? What are the ideal matchups? What teams would you rather see them face? We'll take a look at all that on today's episode and also get some injury news and set you up for Wednesday's game with Charlie Morton on the mound. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Download Gametime today. What time is it? Game time. The Atlanta Braves got a 3-0 win over the Colorado Rockies on Tuesday night. A much-needed win after the way things went down in Philadelphia. You knew this was an opportunity with Chris Sale on the mound to come back home, get a win to kick off this homestand that they have. And we talked about this on yesterday's podcast. If you haven't given that a listen, please go back and do so. But this stretch that started on Tuesday night, if the Braves are going to make the postseason, you have to take advantage of this upcoming now 8-game stretch that the Braves have. You have to go 7-2, at worst 6-3 in this stretch where you get 3 at home against the Rockies, 3 at home against the Blue Jays, 1 at home against the Reds, and then 2 on the road against the Nationals. These are teams that you should beat, but these are teams that the Braves have struggled against so far this season. But if you're going to get into the postseason, you're going to get one of these wild card spots that we're going to talk about. You have to take advantage of this schedule in the first half of the month because it's a little bit harder in the second half when you got 4 against the Dodgers and then you end the season with 3 against the Mets and 3 against the Royals. So this is the stretch of baseball that you have to capitalize on. You have to win these games. You cannot let these games against teams that you should beat. Even with all the injuries, you are still far superior than these teams. You need to win these games. And while I would have loved for it to be a little bit more bigger than a 3-0 win, I'll take whatever wins in whatever fashion that this team can give me right now. And certainly when Chris Sale is on the mound, you don't need a lot of run support, but obviously we'd love to see a little bit more. But Chris Sale was his usual dominant self. 7 innings, 6 hits, no walks, no earned runs, 9 strikeouts on 93 pitches. He eclipses 200 strikeouts on the season. In this start, he becomes the first left-handed pitcher in Braves history to reach that mark, which is just kind of crazy when you think about the lefties in the Braves organization. What I love from Chris Sale in this start, like he was cruising for the first 5 innings. There really was no stress on him. And then to begin the 6th inning, he gives up a leadoff triple, we will say. It's a tough ball. I know everybody's getting on Jorge Soler for not catching that one, and maybe he should have, but it was a tough ball right up against the wall there. I'm not going to be too harsh on Jorge Soler for that one. Either way, it's a leadoff triple. And immediately, and it's just a 2-0 game at this point, immediately the Rockies are in a very good run-scoring situation. I love what Chris Sale said after the game. He was asked specifically, the question he was asked was, how do you respond when maybe a catch or a play isn't made behind you? How do you respond to that? And, again, it was kind of a question to kind of, there's been several plays now when Chris Sale is pitching that Jorge Soler could have made but didn't make, and it's hurt Chris Sale. It's cost him at least 4 runs Now, again, I don't think this necessarily goes in that category. This was a tougher play, but that's the question that Chris Sale was asked. And he said, look, you got a runner on third with nobody out. You know you have to punch somebody out if you're going to get out of that jam. And that's exactly what you saw him do. After giving up that leadoff triple, you just saw him go to another level, take his game to another level. And he strikes out the next two batters, and you see just kind of that bulldog mentality that you have in Chris Sale, and why we were also excited at the potential of going out and getting a Chris Sale, because it brings some of that fire to this team, to this rotation that the Braves have been missing. And look, I think it's hard for a starting pitcher to be that lightning rod for an entire team when you're only playing, once every 4 or 5 days, once every 5 or 6 days. I think it's hard to be that guy for an entire clubhouse like Jock Peterson was on the position player side of things. And Jock wasn't necessarily even an everyday player at times. But I think it's a little bit harder for that. But still, people see that fire and that energy and that I just want to win at all cost mentality that Chris Sale has. And another question I liked from him, or answer that I liked from him after the game, is he was asked about, some of the history that he was making, being the first left-handed pitcher to 200 strikeouts. And his response was, those things are cool and all, but we're focused on winning a World Series. And that's what he said. He didn't say we're focused on winning, a wild card spot, a division, or NLCS. We're focused on winning a World Series. That is the goal. And that is the goal for Chris Sale. And I love hearing that. He said, we can focus on these accomplishments in the offseason when we reflect back on the year. But right now, the focus is winning a World Series. And you just got to love that mentality from Chris Sale and having a guy like that on your team. But getting back to that sixth inning after the leadoff triple, again, you just see him take that bulldog mentality and go to another level to get 2 strikeouts, to give himself a chance to get out of that jam without giving up anything. And that's not the first time we've seen that from Chris Sale this year. He had a bases loaded no-out situation, I want to say, in a recent start, and was able to get out of that. However, he needed some help in this one, because after getting those 2 strikeouts, he throws 96 down the middle. Michael Tolio was ready for it, drilled it to center field. I have no idea how this ball didn't leave the park, but I'm thankful it didn't. We certainly have seen enough of that on the Braves side, of balls that should have been gone that weren't. But he hits this ball at 104 miles per hour at a 27-degree launch angle. But fortunately, it goes to the middle, or the best part of the ballpark. It goes to straightaway center, 405 feet. And Michael Harris just makes an incredible catch, as he tends to do. But I thought that was big, just that sixth inning, to give up the leadoff triple, not give up anything, and shut it down right there. But this start, 23 whiffs is just an insane amount. 44% whiff rate, 35% called strike plus whiff percentage, 15 whiffs on 24 swings against his slider, which is just one of the more devastating pitches in baseball. Threw a few more changeups. They weren't all that great. He did get a couple of whiffs on it, but it did, I think, keep riders in particular off that slider coming in on them. So I think it helped in that regard. You look at the season numbers for Chris Sale now: 16-3, a 2.46 ERA, 1.01 WHIP, 160 and 2/3 innings, 206 strikeouts. He's has the triple crown right now for pitchers in wins, ERA, and strikeouts. He is currently the favorite to win the NL Cy Young, but he's going to have to keep it up, because Zach Wheeler's really good as well and could obviously push him down the stretch here. If one of them were to slip up, or if Chris Sale were to slip up, it might open the door for Zach Wheeler. So he's got to stay on it, and the Braves need him to be on it. But Chris Sale, dominant performance when the Braves needed it. As far as the bullpen goes, Joe Jimenez, been told I'm saying that wrong, but Jimenez and Iggy were both lights out. Iglesias was just named the NL reliever of the year, or the month rather. He may be the NL reliever of the year when all is said and done, but we talked about that yesterday. His numbers in August are just incredible. 2 hits in the month of August. He has gone 2 innings 3 times over the last calendar month. And I think both of those times where he pitched the 9th inning and then the 10th inning and left the ghost runner out there on second. So he is just in an unbelievable run at the moment. Offensively, not what I was hoping to see. You kind of understood the offense slowing down, facing a Zach Wheeler, facing an Aaron Nola. But I was really hoping, after the off day, you refresh, you come home, you face, much worse pitching staff, although Kyle Freeland has his moments every now and then, but still not what I was wanting to see from this offense. I wanted to see them kind of get back on track of scoring 4, 5, 6 runs a game as they were during that 5-game stretch before facing Wheeler and Nola. They did have 7 hits and 5 walks in this one, which is great, but just 1 extra base hit. And we know this offense is very dependent on the extra base hit. 1 for 6 with runners in scoring position, only 6 strikeouts, which is good to see, but the middle of your lineup not getting it done. Soler just remains ice cold at the plate, and he's hurting you defensively. Ozuna, he did have 1 hit on the night. Olsen was over, although he did have a walk. Murphy was over with a tough luck double play on the night. He also had a walk in this one. And so it's just the middle of your lineup not getting it done. That's what prevents you from having a big night. And I don't want to get into the Murphy, Travis d'Arnaud discussion again. Sean Murphy had some hard hit balls in this one. I know nobody cares about that anymore, but the big reason for having Murphy behind the plate, and you can't argue it with what happened on Tuesday, although it helps when you have Sale, Jimenez, and Iglesias throwing to you, but he just calls such a great game behind the plate, and he is so good back there defensively. That's my biggest reasoning for wanting him back there, and eventually some of these hard hits are going to turn into doubles, home runs, especially if you can stop hitting it on the ground. So that's still my optimism for Sean Murphy. I know it's been a tough year, and I know d'Arnaud's been better overall at the plate. Well, that wasn't necessarily the case in August, like we talked about yesterday. But either way, he just calls a tremendous game behind the dish. There was the bottom of the order that got it done with Merrifield. He had a hit and scored the first run of the night on a double by Urshela, who had 2 hits. And then Michael Harris at the top. He had a pair of soft singles and then also had a sac fly. So that was good to see from him. Urshela scored on a throwing error on a soft infield hit by Michael Harris. So those were the guys getting it done offensively, but hope to see more on Wednesday. I really want to see this offense start to take off, especially with Charlie Morton on the mound, who still makes me a little nervous, but we'll talk about that later. Next, we will look at what is the ideal wild card spot for the Atlanta Braves. What are the best matchups for the Atlanta Braves if they get into the postseason? We'll discuss that next. Passion, drive, and patience. What brings home the winning trophy is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance, from superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP or the Cy Young like Chris Sale and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. Thank you for making Locked On Braves your first listen of the day. Now make your second listen the Locked On MLB podcast, where Sully is getting you ready for the postseason picture around all of Major League Baseball. You can find that on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast. On Wednesday night, we will have our Around the League episode, and we'll look at that wild card picture. What does it look like? And then we'll have our mailbag episode later in the week as well. We'll also on Wednesday night cover Wednesday's game against the Colorado Rockies. So that's what's coming your way the rest of this week. Now let's take a look at what is the ideal wild card spot for the Atlanta Braves. Does it really matter? And I think at this point, if you're a Braves fan, just get in. I don't really care what spot it is, but let's take a look at the possible matchups. You look at the Brewers. The Braves are 2-4 against the Brewers this year. They won a series in Milwaukee, and then they got absolutely embarrassed in Atlanta, and one of the worst series of the year, when a really just rare bad stretch for the Braves pitching staff. So they're 2-4 against the Brewers this year, but they've won a series, lost the series. They're 0-3 against the Dodgers. They lost 3 in LA. They have 4 left at home against the Dodgers. Don't think you want to face that offense right now. They're 7-6 against the Phillies. One of the more wild things of this year, as big as the lead as the Phillies have in the division, the Braves have a winning record against them. They're 5-5 against the Mets with 3 left against them at home. So that season series has yet to be decided. They're 3-4 against the Padres, losing a 4-game series at home to the Padres, winning a 3-game series in San Diego. They are 5-2 against the Diamondbacks. But 3 of those wins came at the beginning of April when the Braves were as healthy as they were all year and playing the best baseball that they played all year. They went 2-2, split a 4-game series against the Diamondbacks in Arizona around the All-Star break. They're 4-2 against the Cubs this year. They won both series against the Cubs, those coming in the middle of May. You look at those matchups, and I think the Cubs are the easiest opponent on paper. However, I preface that by saying the Braves have not played well enough, consistently enough to say that any matchup, any potential postseason matchup is an easy matchup for them. They're not that team this year. And even when they were that team last year, it didn't matter. Of course, facing the Phillies, that was probably worst case scenario for that Braves team, as that's who they match up with the least or the best, however you want to look at that. But the Cubs are the one team on paper that you look at and say, I feel pretty confident in that matchup. But for that to happen, those two teams would have to finish as the top two wildcard spots, and I just don't think that's likely. They have a good record against the Diamondbacks at 5-2, but the Diamondbacks scare me as much as anybody, just with their style of baseball. They've been playing better baseball down the stretch. Corbin Carroll is starting to heat up at the plate. They should be getting Ketel Marte back. They just got Christian Walker back. Their rotation is starting to get a little bit healthier. So the Diamondbacks are a team that really scare me, even though the Braves have a good record against them. And again, 3 of those wins came at early April, where the Braves played really their only great stretch of baseball this year and still had Austin Riley, Ronald Acuna, Ozzie Albies at that point. So again, I know the Braves have a good record against the Diamondbacks, but they do scare me a good bit. For the Padres, it just depends on what mood they're in. Depends on what week it is for the Padres. They can look like the best team in baseball at times and have the talent to be that. And then they can look like the absolute worst team at times. We talked about that when we had Javi Reyes of Locked On Padres on the podcast, and it just seems to be that way for years. They switch managers, and it still seems to be the same thing. You just never know what you're going to get from that Padres team. So it all just depends on which version of the Padres you're getting. If you're getting that elite Padres team, then yeah, that's a tough matchup. But if you're getting that Padres team that just can't get out of its own way, then I like the Braves' chances. And we've kind of seen that in the 2 series that the Braves have played against the Padres. They lost a 4-game series at home to them, and they win a 3-game series on the road to the Padres. So that's a team that just Jekyll and Hyde. You don't know what you're going to get. Even though the Braves have a winning record against the Phillies this year, that series would be in Philly. And look, Braves can beat the Phillies head-to-head. We saw that even in the series they just lost in Philadelphia. Those were very competitive, close games. Braves could have very easily won 3 out of 4 in that one. But just the thought of a 3-game series all happening in Philadelphia, I want no part of that in the postseason. That Dodgers lineup is just too scary. Mookie Betts is back. Freddie Freeman's healthy again. Shohei Ohtani's been doing his thing all year. Max Muncy's back for them. That lineup is just very scary at the moment. As good as the Braves pitching staff is, I don't really want any part of that. I think I'd be okay with the Mets. I know they're playing good baseball right now, but I think the Braves match up pretty well with them. So that's a look at some of the matchups. Now, what wild card spot do you want to be in? Looking at the small sample size of the new playoff format, the Phillies were the 3rd wild card in 2022 and advanced to the World Series. They faced the Padres in the NLCS that year, and they were the 2nd wild card. So the first iteration of this new postseason format, you saw the 2nd and 3rd wild card teams match up in the NLCS. The Padres took down the top wild card team that year in the Mets, and the top seed overall in the Dodgers. The Mariners advanced as the 2nd wild card in 2022 and then lost to the top seeded Astros. In 2023, the Diamondbacks advanced to the World Series as the 3rd wild card seed. The Phillies advanced to the NLCS as the top wild card seed. So last year, the top and the 3rd wild card seed in the National League advanced to the NLCS. In the American League, the Rangers won the World Series as the 2nd wild card seed in the AL, taking down the top-seeded Orioles in the ALDS and the 2nd-seeded Astros in the ALCS. So from that very small 2-year sample size, the 3rd wild card spot seems to be the lucky charm, at least in the National League, as that team has made it to the NLCS each of the last 2 seasons. And the wild card team seems to have a success in the National League. And look, it's a 2-year sample size, but in this expanded format, 3 of the 4 World Series teams the last 2 years have been wild card teams. So again, I don't think this has been the outcome that Major League Baseball wanted? Maybe it is. Maybe they want more just parity and chaos in the postseason and having teams that you didn't expect to be there get there. That is what we have seen in the first 2 years. And I think that's what gives Braves fans some hope that if they get one of these wild card spots, maybe just get on a run and get hot. And that's really what October is about anyway. Now, my thoughts in terms of what wild card spot do I want the Braves to get? What matchup is best for them? The top wild card team has advanced past the wild card round just 1 out of 4 times. Again, very small sample size, but I still believe that that is the spot to be in. I think if you have the opportunity to get a home field advantage in a 3-game series, I think more often than not, that is going to be more advantageous for you. So I still think that top wild card spot, really, no matter the matchup, is the best position to be in. Now, normally I would say the third wild card spot could be the best position to be in because you're going to play the lesser of the 3 division winners. And sometimes that third division winner might just win because the division is bad. I don't know that you can say that this year. And who that's going to be is certainly up for grabs at the moment. Both the Brewers, Phillies, and Dodgers, they're all within 2 to 3 games of each other. So it's no real guarantee at this moment who that team is going to be. I think most of us think it will probably be the Brewers. Very well could be the Phillies. And again, if it's the Phillies, I want no part of a 3-game wild card series in Philadelphia. That just does not sound like fun at all. If it is the Brewers, then I think that is the second best case scenario for the Atlanta Braves. Again, first case, I think, is getting that top wild card spot to get that home field advantage. If not that, then I think getting that third spot and playing what could potentially be the Brewers, I think is the next best thing for the Braves. Because while the Brewers did come into Atlanta and embarrass them in a 3-game series, I think that was somewhat of a fluky week for the pitching staff that gave up a ton of runs. I'll take my chances more often than not with that pitching staff. And while I like that Brewers team, they are very young and they're unproven in the postseason. And sometimes you get a young team to the postseason for the first time and they kind of shell up a little bit. So I'm kind of banking on that you get that young team in the postseason going against a veteran team in the Braves that's been there before and done that. I think that becomes a good matchup for the Atlanta Braves. So if the Brewers do end up becoming that third seed, that third division winner, then I think getting that third spot in the wild card and facing the Brewers is the second best outcome other than just getting that home field advantage as the top wild card spot. So again, those are my 2 best scenarios for the Atlanta Braves with these wild card spots. Let me know if you'd agree. What are your best matchups for the Atlanta Braves of these teams that they could potentially face, and which wild card spot do you think is best for them? Does it matter to you, or do you just want to see them get in? Maybe you don't want to see them get in. Maybe you're tired of watching this team, because I hear that a lot in the comment section. That is not me. I am certainly still a believer in this team and think if they get in there, they certainly have a chance with that pitching staff. I would love to know your thoughts down in the comment section below. Next, we'll talk about some injury news with Ozzie Albies, with Merrifield, and get you set up for Wednesday's game where Charlie Morton will try to keep this thing going after following up Chris Sale's great start. We'll discuss that next. PrizePicks is America's #1 daily fantasy sports app with over 5 million active members. PrizePicks is the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. And unlike other apps on PrizePicks, it's just you against the numbers. All you do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. And right now you can win up to 100 times your money on PrizePicks with as little as 4 correct picks. You can turn $10 into $1,000. And 1 Caleb Williams passing yard gets you 1 win on PrizePicks every week in September. That's right, only 1 yard gets you an automatic win every football weekend in September. That's 4 weeks of free wins. PrizePicks is available in more than 30 states across the country, including Georgia and Alabama. Download the PrizePicks app today. Use code LOCKEDONMLB and get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code LOCKEDONMLB on PrizePicks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. PrizePicks. Run your game. You shouldn't have to worry and get all stressed out about buying tickets to your next big event. You don't when you use Gametime. Tell you about Gametime all the time because it's the app that I use whenever I'm looking to buy tickets to the next sporting event, whether it be college football game or I'm looking to go to a Braves game this weekend against the Blue Jays, and I am checking the Gametime app constantly looking for that best deal. They have flash deals out there all the time. Tickets get lower sometimes as you get closer to game time, and you can see the view from your seat, which I absolutely love, and you can filter to get the all-in prices up front so you know what you're paying. You can do it pretty much all in one screen there, which I love. It's a very user-friendly app to use, and the game time guarantee means you'll always get the best price. You find tickets in the same section in a row for less, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. So take the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Again, terms apply. Create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. A little bit of an unfortunate injury news coming out on Tuesday. We'll start with Ozzie Albies, who hasn't been cleared to take batting practice yet, regular batting practice yet. The optimistic timeline had him coming back in the first or second week of September. That does not look like it's going to be the case. Looks like it's going to be more on the 8-week side of things, which puts him back, around the 19th, 20th of September, and he's going to need a rehab assignment at that point. Gwinnett's season only goes through September 22nd. I don't know if they've made the postseason or not, but not a lot of time to get him up to speed. And then you're going to insert him into the lineup after being out for 2 months and hope that he can just get back to being Ozzie Albies. And look, he's going to play. Whit Merrifield could hit 400 between now and then, and Ozzie's going to play. And if that's the case, Whit's going to play somewhere else. But Ozzie's going to be in your lineup, and he should be. I just think that's a lot to ask for, to have a guy be out for 2 months, maybe not get the ramp up that you would want after being out for that long, throw him into a middle of a highly contested wild card race and hope that he's that guy again. When that happens, I hope they kind of ease him back into the order, kind of like they should have done with Michael Harris, but just kind of injuries have led to the situation where you had to use Michael Harris to the top. But I'm hoping they can ease Ozzie into it, batting 6th or 7th in the order. But I just don't love that scenario. I don't love the situation. If he could have come back first or second week of September, that gives him a little bit of time to kind of ramp up, get up to speed, and get back to being the Ozzie that we know he can be. But that's just a small time frame to hope that a guy being out for 2 months is just suddenly going to come back and be that guy when you need every single game. Now, Whit Merrifield, as we talked about, he got hit in the head on Tuesday, left the game, passed concussion protocols after the game. He is going to have a CT scan. It looks like he's all right. Could play on Wednesday, probably won't, as the Braves are typically pretty cautious, especially with any kind of head, brain injury, potential injury there. So I wouldn't be surprised if he sits out on Wednesday. But look, first and foremost, just hope he's okay. But with the news on Ozzie, Braves cannot afford to lose. They can't afford to lose anybody, but they cannot afford to lose Whit Merrifield. The drop off from Merrifield to who would fill in for him is pretty drastic. And so hopefully Whit is okay and can get back in the lineup soon. Now, as far as the pitching matchup on Wednesday, it is Charlie Morton versus Bradley Blaylock. Blaylock, a 23-year-old right-handed pitcher, and 4 starts with the Rockies this year. 20 2/3 innings, 26 hits, 8 walks, 14 strikeouts. That's a 1.65 whip. Just 2 home runs allowed, which is a bit surprising considering he has just a 33.8% ground ball rate. That'd be one of the worst in baseball, or lowest in baseball if he qualified. So maybe there's some regression. Maybe there'll be some home runs coming. He does have a good split finger that has an expected batting average of just 188 and an ex-WOBA against of just 269. So that's a very good pitch for him. But again, hopefully the Braves can get that ball in the air and get it out of the ballpark. As for Charlie Morton, look, he's your 5th starter at this point, and that's how you have to view him. And when your 5th starter is pitching, you really need your offense to step up. And that's what I'm hoping for. Certainly, I want to get another good start out of Charlie Morton. It's been 4 straight starts now of 3 earned or less, but he still just makes me nervous because he can lose it very quickly. He can look great for an inning or two, and then all of a sudden just lose it and things fall apart on him. And how he manages that part of the game when he does lose it, because it seems like it's not a matter of if, but when he loses that command, how he manages that and limits the damage and gets out of it will determine how long and how good Charlie Morton is from start to start. But either way, I'm really more so looking for this offense to put up 6, 7 runs in this game, make it a little bit easier on Charlie, and hopefully the bullpen as well. And hopefully the Braves can go ahead and clinch this series with a win on Wednesday. Thank you for making Locked On Braves your first listen of the day. Now go check out the Locked On MLB podcast, where Sully is getting you ready for the postseason. Check that out on YouTube, wherever you get your podcast. Make sure you listen to Braves and Rockies on SiriusXM, on the SiriusXM app. You can listen to the Braves hometown broadcast. Just search for Braves on the SiriusXM app. That's SXM app to listen to the Braves and Rockies on Wednesday night. Tomorrow's episode, we'll be taking a look around the league, looking at that wild card pitcher and what it looks like, as well as the other division races going on and the race for the NL awards and AL awards, end of season awards. But make sure you subscribe on YouTube if you're new. Hit that thumbs up button if you haven't already. Make sure that you rate, review, and subscribe to the Locked On Braves podcast wherever you get your podcast, and we will talk to you next time.